right, hey, welcome sports fans, and especially you football fans out there. It's time for another edition of Football Talk. I'm your host, Charles E. Smith Jr. This is an Inside Sports production, and hey, we're heading into Week 5 of the NFL. Got all kinds of good stuff going on, so let's go ahead and get right into it. As you know, I do not do the show alone. I only work with the best. So without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce my partner here. Some of you lucky people out there, follow him on Twitter at Chris L Sports. Also, check online chrislsports.blogspot.com for some really fantastic material. Without any further ado, here he is, Mr. Lardieri, Chris Lardieri. What's happening?
Charles, I'm doing well. It's always the best introduction in the business. If this thing ever goes south, I'm sure you can do it for Jay Leno, Jimmy Fallon, whoever. Outstanding as always. Thank you.
All right. Thanks. So, you know, before we get into it, let's go ahead and give a little bit of a shout-out. Mark Brunell, you remember him, played quarterback for the Jags, made 2 AFC championship games, and Mark Brunell has now been entered into the Jaguars equivalent of the Ring of Fame. There's Tony Baselli, who was in first, then came Fred Taylor, and now Mark Brunell. So it's called Pride of the Jaguars. Now, I know a lot of you out there thought the Jaguars had no pride, but apparently, much like me, you guys are wrong about that. The Jags do have pride.
Yes, they do. And another interesting tidbit, Mark Brunell was the best quarterback on the field in Jacksonville this past Sunday, so not a lot of people mentioned that on ESPN, etc. Really underrated quarterback, had a nice long career. People may forget, before all the Geno Smith and Mark Sanchez hubbub in New York, there were some people calling for Mark Brunell to start a few years ago. He was Sanchez's backup, and a lot of people gave him credit for tutoring Sanchez and think that's why he went south. But good guy is a good player, and who knows, maybe they'll win the Jaguars soon, right?
Yeah, that's true. So, you know what? And Mark Sanchez is out for the year. I guess now he did elect to have shoulder surgery, and so he's going to be done for the season, I believe. I think that's what I heard about Mark Sanchez. Not that he was going to get to play this year anyway, but I think he might have taken kind of the easy way out of a difficult situation by having that quote-unquote season-ending shoulder surgery.
Yeah, he won't be booed by the Meadowlands faithful anymore. No more chances of a fumble, and probably a win-win. And, if we didn't know any better, we think Rex Ryan really did a great job of orchestrating this divorce, but we know Rex just isn't that smart.
All right, now we got to go to another one of the more odd stories that you'll ever see, and that is, this was just breaking last week when we did the show, so we didn't really get a chance to talk about it because we just heard that Nate Burleson had broken his arm, was out for the season. But it turns out Nate Burleson was actually at a Monday Night Football party, was driving home with leftover pizza, and the pizza began to fall off the seat. He reached over to grab it and inadvertently crashed his vehicle, broke his arm, and ended his season. So this is the first ever pizza-related injury that I know of in the NFL or any other sport. And not only that, but a devastating season-ending pizza injury sustained by Nate Burleson.
This could be a serious problem. I think the NFL needs to address it. Head injuries, concussions, etc. We've got to educate the players in the NFL about driving safely with your pizza. When I first heard that Burleson got hurt in a car accident, I automatically assumed he was either texting or tweeting. But, in his defense, have you ever had the pizza slide out of the box when you're driving? It could be catastrophic, especially if the cheese is hot. So, he probably just was thinking with his stomach, and fortunately paid the price for the season ending.
That's true, and when it lands cheese side down, then you got to get your floor mats cleaned and everything. But one of the things is I really got to give him credit because I'm surprised these guys actually eat leftovers. That's a good thing there. I like that.
It is, even NFL players, for all the money they do or don't make, they understand in a tough economy you've got to stretch your dollar a little further. So kudos to him for that.
And his team won without him this week, so I guess it wasn't all bad for Nate Burleson. And I guess they picked up Ogletree to replace him on the roster there. So we'll see how things go for the Detroit Lions. They seem to be kind of turning things around there.
Yeah.
Okay, well, shall we talk a little bit about some of the coaches here who may or may not be on the proverbial hot seat namely Mike Tomlin, Tom Coughlin, Greg Schiano. And, we know about Coughlin and we know about Tomlin, and, they're proven coaches, Super Bowl winners. Greg Schiano, though, when you look at him and start putting him under a microscope, all those years at Rutgers, he's there for about 10 years, but, as a college coach, he only had a 500 record even as a college coach. So if you look at the other college coaches who jumped to the NFL, even Chip Kelly being the latest, built a great program there at Oregon. Then you look at all the former Miami Hurricanes coaches that came over, Butch, Dennis Erickson, Jimmy Johnson, and then, Nick Saban, who wasn't coaching at Miami but was a great college coach and then came to Miami, the Dolphins. But Greg Schiano was basically mediocre even as a college coach, and then winds up in Tampa, and, man, things are really going south.
Yeah, and you've come to the right place to talk about Greg Schiano. I am a Rutgers alum. I remember the halcyon days of Terry Shea coaching the Scarlet Knights, and essentially Schiano came in with the bar set as low as it can get and pretty much hurdled it. But like my good friend Paul said, when Schiano left, the guy was a 500 coach. So Paul's props to you doing your homework on that. They had some great years there with Ray Rice, Brian Leonard, some really good teams. But even those teams, like the one that defeated the undefeated Louisville team on a Thursday night, they ended up losing the last 2 games of the year. They could have been in the driver's seat for a BCS game. So, Schiano turned things around there. He changed the image. But after he left, a lot of things came out about his demeanor, the way he treated his players, the way he treated NFL scouts that came on campus, and I think it's caught up to him. And the first instance we saw of that was the infamous Neal incident last year in the Meadowlands against the Giants when he tried to have his defense take Eli Manning's head off. So I think he's slowly but surely wearing out his welcome. Now, he may win this battle with Josh Freeman, but smearing him and his name, basically, it's biting your nose to spite your face. If you want to get rid of the guy and get him down for him, why do you keep dragging his name through the mud? I mean, this week it came out he was on ADHD medicine. I just don't get it. And even before this, Terrell Revis and some of the other players like Goldson that came over from the 49ers questioned his motives and what he's doing. He's going to have a civil war in his locker room regardless of what happens to Josh Freeman.
Yeah, that's true. And he swears up and down that he was not the one who leaked any information to out to the media. So, but yeah, I would say, regardless of how the Freeman situation turns out, I just think he's the wrong man. He's in over his head, and I can't see it just ending well there in Tampa and him turning things around and actually becoming a decent coach at any point here.
Yeah, and it kind of reminds me on a similar scale to Pete Carroll, who coached the Jets and then the Patriots and didn't have much success. Went back to college with SC, figured out how to recruit, how to be a player's coach, and third time around now with the Seahawks, it looks like he's finally figured it out. So, will Schiano lose his job? Will he ever coach again in the NFL? I don't know, but you could take a page from Pete Carroll's book on what not to do. And I know the Glazers hired him to be this disciplinarian, but I think this is taking it a little too far. And you know what? In the NFL, what keeps your job is winning, and he's just not doing that on the field.
Right, and talking about disciplinarians, we can talk a little bit about Tom Coughlin now. Undeniable the results, and I remember, last season we had a show, and you talked about Tom Coughlin being as far as there was the Bill Parcells legend there in Giants lore, but you had said that Tom Coughlin was probably going to surpass him. What do you think? Is this just a little bit of a rough patch there for Tom? Not trying to put you on the spot, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, I basically based that on the fact that I knew Tony Romo would likely be staying with the Cowboys, which is good news for Redskins, Giants, and Eagles fans in the NFC East. The Eagles are on a downturn, and at that point in time, we didn't know what to expect from the RG3 Redskins. And the fact that Eli Manning is young and locked up under contract long term, they since signed Victor Cruz. They had a good core on defense. And I'd say over the last year and a half, a combination of injuries, age, and the fact that General Manager Jerry Reese really hasn't restocked the closet. I mean, the offensive line, they've done a patchwork job, and You've got guys like Chris Snee that have done well there, and David Deal, but those guys aren't getting any younger. The holes in the offensive line have been exposed. They let Ahmad Bradshaw go, handed the reins to David Wilson, who's unproven and not a big back. And then on defense, the Giants have not had a good core of linebackers in years. Even the last two Super Bowl teams had journeymen. I mean, other than Michael Boley, who was a serviceable linebacker with the Giants, never worth the money he got. There was no LT, Carl Banks, Harry Carson, anyone like that there.
Not even a Pepper Johnson.
Yeah, exactly. Or I mean, Jesse Armstead's better than these guys going back to the '90s. So they've had a lot of holes, and they've gotten old, and it's like a perfect storm of injuries. I don't think Coughlin will lose his job. The way the Maras are, and guy won 2 Super Bowls. That'll carry a lot of collateral for you for a while. I think what could happen is if things don't turn around and the injuries persist, or they see that they're not restocking, who's to say Coughlin might say, you know what, I've had a great run, I'm only doing another year or two, and call it quits. But I don't think he'll be fired unless we have a Greg Schiano-like situation, and I really don't see that happening with Coughlin.
But I think, Chris Snee is actually Tom Coughlin's son-in-law. So I think it might be a kind of an uncomfortable Thanksgiving dinner this year. But
yeah, at least I'll say this about Snee. He wasn't going to protect the pizza when he got hurt.
All right, and then what about Tomlin? And you know what? I'd say, I say hot seat. I'm not saying that necessarily the coaches should be fired, but we know what happens. And the fans get restless, and sometimes, irrational moves are made. But especially in the case of Mike Tomlin, when you talk about injuries, I mean, I think when you were talking about the injuries that the Giants have, Tomlin was texting me when you were talking about that, because the Steelers, it just seems like, and I think they got a lineman from, they just made a trade with the Cardinals, where they acquired one of the Cardinals' offensive linemen as well. Marquise Pouncey is gone. They've been patchwork for really even in that last Super Bowl they went to against Green Bay, the offensive line was patchwork, and it's been that way ever since. Just guys hurt, guys in and out of the lineup. But tough situation there in Pittsburgh. And they dropped this game to Minnesota that nobody, we didn't think they were going to lose that one, and sure enough, they dropped that game in London.
Yeah, and basically what messed us up there is Matt Castle had to go start, and we thought Ponder was starting, but that's besides the point. But no, I think it's a similar situation in Pittsburgh. You've had years, at least with there, it's magnified by the fact that they let the free agents walk. They're not going to pay a Mike Wallace. They're going to let a James Harrison go. And between age and an unbelievable slew of injuries and no one to run the ball, it's caught up to them. So I don't think Tomlin's necessarily on the hot seat. If he is, and the Giants end up getting rid of Coughlin, I hope they get in line first to interview Tomlin. I'll put it to you that way. That's
right.
That's what I think of him as a coach. But the fall guy may end up being Todd Haley, given his previous track record and the fact that, like everyone on the offense, doesn't like him very much. So, but yeah, it's two very similar stories, and ultimately, the teams are not drafting the players to replace the free agents that go, and just an unbelievable slew of injuries. Like in our preview shows, if you're healthy in December, you've got a good shot at running the table once you get into playoffs. If not, forget it. I mean, look at all the holes the Packers had on defense and injuries and so forth the last couple of years. That's what kept them from repeating or getting back to the Super Bowl. And everyone's high on Seattle right now and Denver, but they're just a couple more key injuries away from being brought back down to reality. So health is a very underrated factor in the NFL.
Yeah, and that's one thing with, when you talk about Denver, they've had 2 of their offensive linemen who are out for the year. But you know what? When you talk about being healthy, stringing together games, we had talked about Cincinnati, were they for real? And I think one of the things that I was listening to one of the shows, and I think it was Shannon Sharp. In fact, I know it was Shannon Sharp who said the one thing about Dalton when they were talking about, is he the guy to lead them back, to a Super Bowl, actually. And he said what he needed to see from Dalton was just a string of maybe 4 or 5 games where he plays 4 or 5 games at a high level. And he hasn't seen that from Dalton yet. And, sure enough, this is before the game against Cleveland, and they lose to Cleveland this weekend.
Yeah, he hit the nail on the head. I think Andy Dalton is becoming a younger version in that shop. Show me what you can do. String it together. Don't just manage the game and barely win the game. Lead your team to victory. And I've heard some people say out of Cincinnati, maybe if the Bengals had a better quarterback, they'd be even more explosive on offense. Yeah, they've got A.J. Green and formidable running game, but is he the guy to take them to the next level? I don't know. And the jury's still out. And in a very winnable AFC North this year, you can't be dropping games to the Cleveland Browns if you're going to contend and go to the next level of the playoffs.
And you know what? Speaking of the Cleveland Browns, now they had the big Trent Richardson trade, and then Brandon Weeden, their quarterback, gets injured, and he's not starting. So the starting job now goes to Brian Hoyer. Now here's a team who trades their franchise running back away. So they start their second-string quarterback, and they've won 2 games in a row. So they're 2-0 with Brian Hoyer starting at quarterback. So maybe the Richardson trade wasn't even really necessary. They just needed to start their backup QB.
Yeah, this might be the new magic elixir for success and winning in the NFL. Mike Lombardi must be onto something. Start your backup quarterback. Hey, look, it worked for the Vikings too, right? But no, it's a great story. Hoyer's actually from Cleveland. He was a great high school quarterback there. I had never heard of him before he was named the starter a couple weeks ago. But who would have thunk? Everyone was complaining that the Browns tanked it, and this is very NBA-like. And now look, so they're a contender in the AFC North. Am I seeing things?
Yeah, I know. All the teams are a slew of 2-2 teams there, and they're right in the thick of it. And I just like the way that they've looked ever since, they made the Richardson trade and put Hoyer in the starting quarterback. And something's going on there in Cleveland. And for once, it's actually something good.
Maybe he's a second coming of Brian Sipe. Am I outdating myself?
No one else will date you. Okay. Anyways, moving over. A game that we picked, and it was one of those where we thought, the Atlanta Falcons have to win this game. They can't fall to 1-3. They're playing at home. They're playing the Patriots. The Patriots, this is their first big test actually against an elite-level team. And what happens? The Patriots go into Atlanta. They beat the Falcons. Unfortunately for the Patriots, they did lose big Vince Wilfork for the season with a torn Achilles tendon. And Wilfork, can play nose tackle. He can play defensive tackle, 3-4, 4-3, whatever your lineman is. A mammoth human being, but just a quick guy up there on the offensive line, or defensive line, rather.
Yeah, that's going to be a huge loss for them. I actually saw that play when it happened and thought this can't be good. He just stuffs the middle. He's really been the anchor on that defense for years, and like we said, injuries could kill you. I mean, the Patriots have been playing well on the defensive side of the ball. Aqib Talib had a phenomenal game Sunday night, picking off Matt Ryan. But if you're going to be able to run on the Patriots now, that can't be a good thing. So definitely something to be concerned about there. That said, thinking back to my picks, playing Monday morning quarterback, I should have known you always take Tom Brady over Matt Ryan. Even with chance to get back in the game, he throws a key interception. Can't get the drives going, too little, too late, and Brady has cast the no-name receivers, get the job done. Like you said, not good to be 1-3, albeit the NFC South as Tampa and Carolina, but this keeps up. The Saints are going to run away with it, and the Falcons are going to have a hard time even getting in as a wild card. So better turn things around now here, 1/4 of the way into the season.
Absolutely. And then, the other big game was the Texans. I mean, the Texans have got the Seahawks down by 17 points at the half. And really, it looked like, when I watched that whole game, and it looked like the Seahawks were ready to just kind of, throw in the towel, go in. It's like, hey, we did the best we could. Let's go ahead and just lose this game with dignity. And they come out in the second half, hold Houston scoreless in the second half, and take the game. That's fantastic. And Russell Wilson, sophomore jinx? Yeah, I don't think so.
No, not at all. And he showed me a lot. He was getting battered in the first half, not getting anything going offensively. And he and Pete Carroll and the coaching staff clearly made the adjustments. And look, we make fun of the Texans. They're not really a legit Super Bowl contender, but winning down there in their stadium is pretty impressive. Coming back from that deficit, even better. But Matt Schaub suddenly turned into Philip Rivers and puts the ball into Richard Sherman's hands, and we've got a tie ball game, and Seahawks come back in overtime to win it. You can't be doing that, and that's why people don't believe in the Texans. Matt Schaub is not the guy to lead your team to the next level. He makes the costly interceptions when he shouldn't. As a team, the Texans can never seem to put teams away. Tennessee really should have beaten them 2 weeks ago.
Right.
And I think the rest of the league is kind of that they're pretenders. They may end up winning that division, but where are they going to go? Maybe win a wild card game, get to a divisional game, and lose again to a contender. I'm not impressed by that.
All right, and what about as we know, the Steelers played that game against the Vikings in London. What do you think about these games being played in London, by the way?
I've never been a fan of it, and what Roger Goodell is trying to do is the David Stern model. The difference is basketball has been popular around the globe a lot longer than American football has. For instance, the Lakers are going over to China, and Kobe Bryant might be even more popular there than he is in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
I know he is his wife or ex-wife's house, whatever she is now, but that's beside the point. But, they're talking about the Jaguars playing 2 games there a year. Well, that's great for the Jaguars. They'll probably have more fans at that game than they will in all of Jacksonville, the remaining 6 games. I'm not a fan of it. I don't think that there's that much demand to have games in London or play even more. If the NFL wants to pick something controversial to pursue, they should pursue the 18-game season, which I don't agree with. But you're marketing to an audience where I don't think it's ever going to catch on. American baseball hasn't caught on in Europe, it's always been the Japanese league. But let's face it, Europeans love their soccer. They love basketball. I don't think it'd be smart to have a Super Bowl over there. It's more of, the NFL's on top, and they're looking to stretch their dollar more and make more money, but I don't think London's a place to do it. I'm actually going to be writing a column about this for Sports Climax website. I write a column for him. My friend Tom runs, and he's a big Lion fan. Just want to give him a shout-out. He's pretty happy right now. And essentially what I'm saying in this column is forget London. Have some NFL games in Los Angeles. We want a team back here. Between the government messing things up and teams not wanting to commit to either of the stadium projects, there's demand here, but it's just bureaucracy that's tied it up. Play some games here. We'd love to have a Super Bowl here. We'd love to have a couple regular season games here. You'll see there's far more interest, and there's a global audience here. We've got people from around the globe living here, Australia, Asia, Europe, you name it, South America. Mm-hmm. And I think that'd be a better marketing tool for the NFL. We've had these games in Europe for years. The developmental league or whatever it was called, the NFL Europe, right. That failed. I just think it's a waste of time. Sorry to alleviate here, but Roger Goodell's chasing something that's not there.
And if I remember correctly, I believe the Giants won their first Super Bowl out here. That was in Pasadena, was it not?
You got it, at the Rose Bowl, and my dad had tickets and sold them. So as a young 8th grader in frigid New Jersey, I always wanted to get to the Rose Bowl. So that was one of the few places I checked out when I came to L.A. I paid homage to the first Parcells Super Bowl.
All right, and before we get into the picks of the week, I just got to say something about the Rose Bowl. I know when you went there, when you drove down all those narrow streets that lead down into the Rose Bowl, you could just imagine, 60,000 people trying to get out of there. I mean, how long would it take? Probably 2.5 hours just to reach a freeway?
I'll tell you a true story. I went with my wife, who was then my girlfriend, and my good friend Paul from college. In 1997, we saw Peyton Manning and his Tennessee Vols come to the Rose Bowl, and it was hotter than hell, and it was great to see him in person. I thought then he'd be a great NFL quarterback, and it probably took about 2.5 hours to get out of that golf course parking lot. And I said, I don't think I'll be coming to any of these sold-out Rose Bowl games for a while. And then they got smart, and over the years they've had shuttle buses come from Old Town Pasadena. So if they're ever going to have an NFL game, I think they better prep for it, that's for sure.
Right. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the picks of the week. Everybody loves the picks of the week segment. And, well, last week we agreed on everything. We both went 4-2. I'm working my way back up to 500 here. I'm 11-13 overall. Chris is 17-7. And you know, the bad thing here, Chris, is you've been really stellar this year. 4 of those 7 losses have come at the hand of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, you know, you can't accuse me of being a Giants apologist. I guess you can a Steelers apologist. I will eat crow when I need to. I thought they'd contend and possibly go deep in the playoffs this year, and I keep picking with that in mind, and I need to wake up and smell the roses.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get down to the first games we're going to pick here. 6 doozies of games. So we've got first game, the Baltimore Ravens, the helter-skelter 2-2 Baltimore Ravens, going into Miami to play the 3-1 Miami Dolphins. Dolphins just got kind of, it turned into a track meet there at the Superdome, and New Orleans was just too much for them. They're just not at that level yet. But Baltimore at Miami to play the Dolphins, how do you see that one?
As you know, I've been skeptical of the Ravens all year. I think that's coming to fruition. Joe Flacco just doesn't have the targets he did last year. A lot of changes on defense, and the Bills exposed them this past Sunday, for instance. On the flip side, Dolphins, like you said, they tried to run with the big boys in the Superdome. Didn't happen, but I didn't see any quit in that team. There are a few turnovers that change that game fairly quickly. Ryan Tannehill interception comes to mind. And I think they bounce back this week. They come back home. The Ravens are a beatable team, and I think the Dolphins get back on track.
All right, and you know what? I'm gonna agree with you there on this one. I go with the Dolphins too, playing at home. And the other thing is, I look at the type of teams. I just don't think the Dolphins have the personnel to beat a team like the Saints, who can really just run that high-powered offense. But to me, the Baltimore Ravens, especially the way they're playing right now, this kind of tailor-made for the Dolphins team, so I'm going to go with the Dolphins on that as well.
Keep agreeing with me. We'll keep that distance the same, right?
Okay, and then the next game, New England Patriots, kind of banged up now. You know, Vince Wilfork is out, going into Cincinnati to play those Cincinnati Bengals, who just have trouble stringing together good performances here. So I'm going to go ahead and pick this one first. I think even with Wilfork out, I'm not really that sold on the strength of the Cincinnati running game. And I'll take, when you talk about the quarterback matchup, of course, Brady over Dalton. But also, I think Belichick will know how to scheme for this. And with those 2 factors in mind, I think I'm going to go ahead and pick New England in this game.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm going to have to agree with you again. And normally I'd pick the Bengals. They're such an up-and-down team, and I could see them rebounding like they did against the Packers a couple weeks ago. But 2 things here that stand out to me, Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. And I just can't see either of them losing to the Bengals. As we hit on earlier, not impressed with Andy Dalton. And another one of Belichick's scrap heap projects, LeGarrette Blount, running the ball well out of the backfield. I think he's going to be a boost to that offense. And I'll pick the Patriots to get another big road win.
All righty. And then the next game, the Houston Texans. You know, we talked about them early, but supposedly being Super Bowl bound. And then they're going into San Francisco. But San Francisco, they've had problems of their own. Haven't really beaten, they beat the Packers the first week of the season, then had a couple of down games, then got right against the Rams. But then again, if you're going to get right, that's the team you want to play. So Houston Texans going into San Francisco to take on Colin Kaepernick and the San Francisco 49ers.
I'm going with the 49ers. They're going to have, 10 days off since last week's Thursday night game. I think they're well rested. The ship is headed back in the right direction. As we hit on, I'm not impressed with the Texans. I'm not a huge fan of them. I really can't see them going on the road and winning in San Francisco like the Colts did. The Colts have Andrew Luck at quarterback, and they had a nice 2-headed monster at running back. So I'll pick the 49ers in this one. I think their defense shuts down Schaub and confuses him even more. And it was nice to see a Frank Gore sighting. Looks like he's back in his form from the past few years. So look for them to pound the ball with him, and maybe some play action to free up Kaepernick to do his thing.
Okay, and then let's go on to our 4th game on the schedule. I'm going to go ahead with I'm going to go in with this the 49ers for all the reasons you just said. There's not really even really an analysis that needs to be made further than that. And, you know, like I've said about the Houston Texans, every week something is missing from them as a championship team. So I'm going with the Niners. Seahawks. Seattle Seahawks just playing stellar ball this year, going into Indianapolis to face Andrew Luck and the Colts. Trent Richardson, Andrew Luck against Marshawn Lynch and Russell Wilson. I got to go with Seattle here. I've got to go with Seattle. The stout defense and this big win that they had over Houston this past weekend, showing that even in a hole, they can come back. And they're not an explosive team like that that's going to put up a lot of points. So for them to stay poised and come back against that Houston team really showed a lot with them sticking to the game plan. I'm going with Seattle against Indianapolis.
I have to agree with you. While I think it's a tough task to win two on a road like the Seahawks will be asked to, ultimately, I like the matchup of the Seahawks defense over the Colts offensive line. Yeah, Andrew Luck's great. The running game's really improved dramatically with the addition of Richardson, but as we know, last year I believe Luck was the most hit quarterback in the NFL, and with that Seahawks pass rush to shut down corners, I think they'll be able to take away the air game, and I'm going Seahawks.
And with Richard Sherman back there in the defensive backfield, if the over-under for interceptions for him was 1.5, would you play the over or the under?
Wow. You know what? I'll play the under just because I think he'll get one and they'll avoid him the rest of the game.
All right, so let's go on to the next one. One I know you're going to love to pick, and that is the division rivals, the Philadelphia Eagles, going into New York. Eagles at 1-3, Giants at 0-4. But the Eagles really haven't done anything since they won the first game of the season against the Redskins. Other than that, they've just been flat out terrible. And we know about the woes of the Giants. So I don't know if you need to get out a coin to decide this one or what, but Philadelphia Eagles at the New York Giants.
Yeah, this is a tough one, and I was told in the pre-production meeting that I can't pick a tie. So I don't have a coin near me. I'm going to go with the Giants. I really don't know why, other than the fact that I think the Eagles' defense is pretty porous and might actually help Eli out this week if he could stay off his back. Combined with the fact that I really don't think that Tom Coughlin coach team is going to go 0-5 after losing to this Philly team. Now, don't get me wrong; they've got weapons on offense. LaShawn McCoy and Deshaun Jackson have tormented the Giants for years, so I wouldn't be surprised if they put up a lot of points. But just going with the home team. I mean, really, so flip of a coin, proverbially right there, I'll pick the home team. That said, expect the Eagles to win.
Well, I can't. You know, down to some intangibles, I can't see, looking at where the Eagles are, I don't look at Michael Vick as a guy who can turn things around. Eli Manning can turn things around, so by the narrowest of margins, I gotta agree with you and go with the Giants on this. But you know, will I be shocked if the Eagles win? Absolutely not.
You know, Charles, this kind of game is like picking. What would you rather have, hurricane or an earthquake? I mean, the evil of two lessers.
Yeah. Okay, and the last game on the slate here, San Diego Chargers at Oakland, big division rival, going all the way back to the Holy Roller game, which I remember watching when I was in high school. San Diego Chargers at Oakland to play the Raiders. Terrell Pryor is going to be back under center for the Raiders. And as far as the San Diego Chargers, Malcolm Floyd is out. Dwight Freeney is going to be out of the game. So really it's a matter of, a little bit of a depleted lineup, as most of the teams have. San Diego going into Oakland. I think San Diego has a better team here. I got a feeling about this game, and I'm just going on a hunch. I think the Oakland Raiders are going to win this game. This is kind of a game that one of those shoulda, coulda, woulda games for the Chargers that they don't win. I'm going to go ahead and go with the underdog Raiders in this game.
I'm proud to announce that we are going to disagree for once. Picking the Chargers, I think they're on a roll. I think Phillip Rivers is actually playing well and got his confidence back. part of that. Thank you, Tony Romo. And while they will miss Malcolm Floyd, they've been playing without him the last few weeks, and Rivers hasn't missed a beat. Antonio Gates, Danny Woodhead have gotten into the mix. And Freeney will definitely be a loss on the defensive side of the ball. But lo and behold, who do they go up against? Matt Flynn. And with Darren McFadden hurt, I know it's a shock Raiders fan. That never happens during any season, right? McFadden, very resilient, not fragile at all. I just looking at that game with the Redskins last week. Flynn gave the Skins a gift, and they end up winning the game. And I think that'll happen here. Key turnover, a failure to capitalize on a drive, and I'll pick the Chargers. Playing on that ugly baseball dirt at the Coliseum.
All righty, well, there's the picks of the week. We agree on all but one of them, folks. So, we were just about out of time here. Actually, we are out of time. If we were on actual TV, you would have a floor director frantically waving his hands at me, telling me it's time to go out and doing the timeout signals and everything else. So before
hold on. The orchestra's playing the music. We better get going.
All right. Any final words before we head out here, Mr. Lardieri?
No, I think I've said enough, other than the fact that let's see if we'll have some 0-5 teams this week. And, I just think the Seahawks are going to keep marching on, as will the Broncos, and that's going to be and two interesting stories to follow. These teams stay healthy. Could they be on a collision course for the Super Bowl?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's early, but the way these teams are playing right now, they're definitely fun to watch.
Okay, and I've set another bet for you just right before the end. 2.5 days. That's the over-under for how long it takes for the U.S. government to become operational again. You play on the over or the under?
I'll play the over. The Tea Party is a stubborn group, and you throw Obamacare into the mix, and by the way, Obamacare, I don't know if you know this, has been a cause to the rise of injuries in the NFL. It's just a little-known fact I wanted to throw out there for you.
I thought about that. We'll have to talk about that off the air. And by the way, I do think that the U.S. government, much like when your internet service goes down for a day, and when you get your bill at the end of the month, you'll see a prorated little credit on there. I think for all these days that's shut down, they owe the United States people, the people of the United States, a little tax credit for all these days that we're still paying taxes, and yet they're not operating. You see it, fair enough, right?
I agree. And, I saw you post that on Facebook the other night, but given that I know how the NSA and the IRS works, I didn't comment on it or agree with you. I don't want to be audited, and I don't want men in dark suits and sunglasses at my front door.
All right, everybody. So with that said, thanks for watching Football Talk. We'll do this again next week. We do it all for you, the fans. And remember, you can follow me on Twitter at The Inside Sports. Follow Chris Lardieri on Twitter at Chris L Sports. So for Mr. Lardieri, this is Charles E. Smith Jr., and we will see you all next week. Thanks for watching.